Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku was born to shine part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝗧𝗵𝗲 from fanfiction. So let's start the video. Sometimes, a small and subtle change can completely transform one's life into a new world. This was precisely the case for Izuku Midoriya, who summoned the courage to stand up to 𝗏𝗏 one day. Rather than fleeing, the girl became his loyal and faithful friend. A punk rock girl who would leave an indelible impression on him by entering his life. They would never be alone in life and become heroes of legend whose love would be talked about for years. Kyoka 𝗔𝗫. The 𝗔𝗫s had just moved to Mizudafu near UA, which allowed the musical parents access to potential new clients and a stable place to raise their daughter. With her husband busy in the studio with a new client, Mika took her daughter to the park and picked up the little girl's uniform for Great Start Preschool. Mika let her daughter explore the park and went to the uniform store to try her luck. Unfortunately, Kyoka 𝗔𝗫's luck was not on her side. Well, it didn't seem so at first. But things are rarely what they seem. For Kyoka, it seemed her entire world had been flipped upside down. First, her parents had made her move to a new town, Mustafa. She had to go to a new school, she missed her friend, and to top it all off, this loud jerk had started yelling at her. Due to her quirk, earphone jack loud noises were not her friend. So, he got louder when she tried to ask him if he could quiet down. Then he started making fun of her quirk, and the explosions began in earnest. She tried to run, but the ringing in her ears threw off her balance. Then running was no longer an option. The jerk and his jerk squad stood over her, yelling and knocking her down when she tried to move. So, all she could do was hold her head and cry for them to stop. Suddenly, the explosions seemed to die. At least, their sound did. The next thing she knew was that some boy was huddled over her, holding his hands over her ears while the loudmouth jerk and his jerk friends were trying to beat him up. She did not know if it was the boy huddled over her or the extra hands covering her ears, but she felt safe, and the explosions seemed so far away. The kicks and punches raining down on her were not far enough. 𝗧𝗵𝗲. In a world where many people are judged by their quirks, some such as 𝗧𝗵𝗲, when his powerful quirk manifested, the praise started and did not seem to be slowing down. What 4-year-olds would love being told how great they were going to be? Izuku Midoriya, on the other hand, well, being able to channel sound into light does not lend itself to being praised. Katsuki told him he could not be a hero but could be his subordinate and put on a show after he beat a villain. Katsuki did not like it when Midoriya told him he would still be a hero. Didn't Izuku understand Katsuki was going to be the best hero ever? Everyone said so. Well, Deku would have to be taught a lesson. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya is a young child who is approaching his 5th birthday. Although he possesses a quirk that enables him to create light, it is not considered particularly impressive. In addition, he can convert sound into light. Despite these limitations, he aspires to become a hero. However, given his powers, he may be better suited for a role in a pyrotechnic crew at an amusement park. As he prepares to start school next week, he was playing at the park when he heard the sound of a girl crying out in pain. He ran over, ever wanting to be a hero, to witness 𝗏𝗏, causing explosions while a little girl with purplish-black hair with small headphone jacks coming from her ears was screaming and crying, holding her head. He ran over and pushed 𝗏𝗏 away from his latest victim. "Stop it, 𝗏𝗏. Can't you see you are hurting her?" He activates his quirk, slightly muffling the sound of the explosions. "Of course I can, stupid Deku. She is useless, just like you. Now move before I make you pay even more." She didn't want to listen, so I'm making her listen. "No, I won't move BB because I am going to be a hero, and heroes always help." Bakugo and his followers begin to laugh so hard that they almost stop the assault. Almost. Bakugo swings his fist at Izuku lets loose his lights, blinding Bakugo and his cronies slightly. Well, the cronies, at least Bakugo was ready. He lets his explosion go at point-blank range, knocking Izuku down. As the rest of the group gets their bearings, they begin to rain down punches and kicks. Izuku pulled himself over to the girl and covered her ears, not letting go as he takes the beating. The responsible adults. 𝗵𝗏 𝗵𝗃 and Mitsuki Bakugo met at the park to drop off their boys for a playdate. The two had been friends for years, and their children were close in age. As the school year approached, they decided to go shopping together. Mitsuki had a great time, even playfully teasing her friend 𝗵𝗏. The two had recently begun working out together again. Mitsuki was in great shape, but 𝗵𝗏 had let herself slip a little after Izuku was born. It did not help that 𝗵𝗏's husband, that worthless piece of shit, up and left for the United States 3 months after Izuku was born. 𝗵𝗏 was having some self-esteem issues, thinking that he would come back if she got back into shape. While conversing during their stroll through the store, they overheard a woman with lengthy purple hair seeking assistance from the sales associate on the appropriate attire for Great Start Kindergarten. As the saleswoman appeared occupied, 𝗵𝗏 approached the woman and gently tapped her shoulder to offer aid. "Excuse me, miss," 𝗵𝗏 said. The woman turned.
Yes?
"The uniforms you are looking for are right here." 𝗵𝗏 motioned to a clothes section. "Oh, thank you. Is your child going to Great Start as well?" "Yes." "Yours?" "Yes, both of our kids are." It was simple interaction, but that was how things usually begin, with something simple. Mitsuki and 𝗵𝗏, upon finding out there was another child their kid's age, decided to befriend the woman and see about setting up some future playdates. After all, a child could never have enough friends. When Mika let slip that they were new to the neighborhood, the women began to share some things about the shops in the area and where to find the best deals. It was a bonding familiar to the mothers, and Mika seemed like a nice balance between Mitsuki and 𝗵𝗏. They planned to have lunch together to introduce their kids when a commotion in the park drew their attention. Mitsuki could hear some small explosions in the distance, and her heart sank. Like all good mothers, they moved towards the commotion, hoping against hope that their children were not involved in the fracas. But they were proven wrong when they came upon the scene of Izuku doing his best to protect little Kyoka and Katsuki over the top of them, letting his explosions run rampant. As soon as Katsuki heard his name, he froze. With a look of sheer terror, he was his mother and auntie approaching him with the speed that would carry upon it swift discipline. His cohorts attempted to run only to be yanked back by 𝗵𝗏, who pulled out her phone to call the other parents. When they arrived on the scene, the parents, after offering their severe apologies, dragged their children away, promising swift discipline. Mitsuki did the same, apologizing to Mika as she snatched Katsuki by his ear and dragged him off, her yelling increasing as they got farther away. Mika and 𝗵𝗏 tended to their little ones, with Izuku looking up battered and bruised but smiling as he saw Kyoka being comforted by what he guessed to be her mother. "Oh good, she is safe," he said. As the two mothers separated, Kyoka, still sniffling, looked over her mom's shoulder at the boy, who jumped to save her. She smiled at him when he gave her the biggest smile he could and gave her a thumbs up. Track 1. We're going to be friends. The White Stripes. Watch V = PKFD8D3X. The real beginning. Izuku was recovering at home the following day when he heard a knock at the door. His mother answered it, and he could hear her joyfully greeting someone. Soon after, Mika and Kyoka entered the room, with Kyoka sporting bandages around her jacks and walking over to Izuku. "Are you okay?" Izuku says shyly. "Yes," she responded. Thank you for saving me." Izuku smiles proudly. "It's okay. I want to be a hero like All Might. He is my favorite." "Mine's Present Mike," Kyoka responded with a shy smile. "Do you want to go play in my room?" Izuku asked hesitantly. "Yeah." The two kids promptly ran off to play, yesterday's troubles forgotten. Mika and 𝗵𝗏 were happy. At least Kyoka and Izuku seemed to be getting along well. The two mothers sit in the kitchen to enjoy tea as their children's giggles and laughter slowly fill the house. It's easy for children to become friends. For Kyoka, Izuku wasn't loud. For Izuku, Kyoka wasn't mean. It didn't take a lot, and a few playdates were all they needed to declare that they were friends. Day 1. Izuku is standing outside his friend's house. He is so excited about having a new friend. Yes, he has 𝗏𝗏, but Kyoka does not hit him as 𝗏𝗏 does. Nor does she call him Deku. She shares her toys, does not make him cry, and says they are friends. He is nervous about the first day of school but equally excited because he gets to see his friend now every day. Maybe Bakugo will stop being mean, and they can all play together. Such are the hopes of Izuku. Kyoka is eagerly getting ready for school. looking forward to meeting her best friend Izuku outside. However, her mom seems to be taking too long, and she wants to hurry up and play with him before class. "Mom, please hurry," she urges impatiently. Her mom laughs. "Midoriya will not go anywhere without you. Your dad wants to take a picture first. Honey, hurry up." Kyoka is about to explode. Her dad comes downstairs with his camera. "Here I am, Kyoka." "Come on," they lead her outside, where Midoriya is waiting. Izuku says, bursting with excitement. "Hi, Izuku. Let's go." Kyoka responded. "Now hold on, you two. We need to take some pictures first," chimes in Mrs. Jiro. "But Kyoka whined back, adding a foot stomp for effect. "The more you fuss, the longer this will take." Mrs. Jiro chided her daughter. "Come on, Kyoka, let's just take the picture so we can go," Izuku says, hoping she will agree. "Fine, Izuku. Just because I want to get going," she says, rolling her eyes. The Jiros get them to stand together and smile while they take several pictures. "Can we go now?" Kyoka says, ready to explode if they make her stay still any longer. Her dad chuckles. "Yes, you guys can go, have fun." "We will," they yell back as they take off. Kyoka and Izuku are walking to school and having a wonderful time. They are talking about all the fun stuff they will get to do, and food they will eat, and whose house they will go to so they can play. Then it happened. Bakugo showed up. "You guys got me in trouble. Come here so I can beat you guys up." "That sounds like a terrible idea," Izuku says. "Why would we do that, Bakugo?" Kyoka adds her hands on her hips, mimicking a pose she has seen her mom do many times. "What did you say?" Bakugo yells at them, not used to someone not listening to him, even if his demands are stupid. Who would willing to walk to someone to take a beating? Honestly, I digress. "Kyoka, why did you say that?" Izuku spat out as he saw the vein in Bakugo's forehead about to pop. Bakugo started walking towards them. "Because he is a butt." She looked at Bakugo stomping towards them. "We should probably run," she adds, noticing the vein as well. "Yeah, we should," Izuku says as he grabs Kyoka by the hand, and they take off running, with Bakugo in hot pursuit. Kyoka keeps calling Bakugo, Bakugo. And even Izuku says it a few times as they run for their little lives. For reasons they would never know, Kyoka and Izuku started laughing as they seemingly ran for their lives. As they get to the schoolyard, they see the teacher and they yell, "Safe." The two hug, declaring, "Best friends for life." Bakugo wasn't dumb enough to try getting them at recess, as the teacher watched everyone like a hawk. But after class was a different story. But a swift kick to the shin from Kyoka put an end to it as his quarry raced off. When Kyoka and Izuku made it to her house, they burst out of breath and panting. Mika kept things calm. "So, how was your first day?" Deciding that it would be best to try and head this off after the kids have their snacks and are playing in Kyoka's room, Mika calls Mitsuki. Bakugo did not chase them to or from school for 3 months. Someone to depend on. Kyoka and Izuku, being best friends, the same begins to trickle down to their parents. Mika and Inko get chances to bond and become closer. It works out well for the busy parents as they can rely on each other. Inko has someone to watch Izuku if she has to work late, and the Jiros have someone to watch Kyoka when they take a gig or need to scout talent. Izuku and Kyoka don't care. All they know is that they have sleepovers all the time, which is perfect for them. However, their parents have the most difficulty getting them to understand that they can't take baths together. As far as when it was time to sleep, Kyoka and Izuku would always end up sleeping next to each other. The parents would take pictures and giggle. Izuku begins to learn how to play the guitar with Kyoka while he is at her house. Initially, he is hesitant, but when her parents offer him praise, he leaps at the chance to learn. Inko was very happy that he was developing a hobby and doing so with Kyoka. On the other hand, Kyoka learns way more about heroes than she thought was possible. She would giggle at Izuku, who would burst into a muttering spree whenever he would talk about a new hero he saw or about quirks. It didn't bother her. She instead found it funny. On the other hand, learning how to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches sent Kyoka to the moon. She could now have her favorite food anytime she wanted. Kyoka was pleased that Izuku was leaning the guitar with her. Like her parents, she loved music. Sharing that with her best friend makes the little girl very happy. Seeing the two children practice together allows the Jiros and Inko to dream of their children being a superstar musical duo rather than superheroes, a much safer career choice. Izuku is rubbing off on Kyoka. She wants to try harder in school. Izuku is brilliant, so when Kyoka does not know something or needs clarification about a lesson, she gets him to help her. The teacher moved their desks next to each other to save herself the hassle. Kyoka wants to be a hero and musician. They are going to be together. Kyoka is cranky when Izuku does not spend the night. And vice versa. Izuku, though, decides that he wants to learn to defend himself and joins a little dojo. Kyoka isn't pleased about this, though, because it means she can't spend as much time with him. But when Katsuki, who would alternately ignore or try to bully them, was trying to bully her after catching her alone, Izuku found them and was able to fend Katsuki off so they could flee. She was so proud of her friend that it made her think his being a dojo was good. The way he smiled after their little victory may have helped her reach that decision. Kyoka and Izuku are simply enjoying being best friends. They put on talent shows for the Ghirose and rescue Inko from the many villains in Izuku's living room. They are always there for each other, helping the other one up or pulling the other one along. Teachers just put them together in school to save the trouble. Their parents take tons of pictures of them. First grade, second, third, and fourth. Inko and Mika are always whispering and giggling, watching the two. Izuku does not know what they are saying, but Kyoko hears them saying something about marriage and other icky stuff. They are just best friends, the best of friends forever and ever. Right. Inko. Why was finding a dojo willing to take her son so hard? There were many reasons. Smaller dojos rejected him for having a minor quirk, deeming him useless for fighting or heroics and not worth their time. She felt wrong about the medium-sized dojos willing to take him. She thought they would only do it for the money and needed to devote more time to Izuku. The larger dojos were a conglomeration of the problems of the small and medium, and they added the issue of fees. Their fees were far beyond what Inko could afford. She would have to take a second job to pay for it, which the mother considered. She wanted to support Izuku, but if she did this, they would never see each other, and she would be asking the Ghirose or the Bakugos to raise her son while she was absent. With Hisashi abandoning them, she didn't want to put Izuku through that. It had been a long day filled with rejection and disappointment when she noticed a dojo off the beaten path but seemingly clean. Looking up, she saw the hand-painted sign with the kanji for the way. It was a small place, and I would probably tell her no, but what was one more rejection? As she entered the building, a bell above the door announced her presence. The man that emerged from the back was not what Inko was expecting. He was a teen, handsome and American from his features and coloration of blonde hair and blue eyes. She heard the young man call to the back, "There is a customer. Give me a minute." At least that is what Inko heard, as her English could have been better. She wondered if this would be a mistake, an American dojo in Japan. The man bowed and said in perfect Japanese, "Welcome, madam. How can I be of service to you today?" Inko smiled and reined in her surprise. "Thank you, sir. I wondered if the sensei was available. I want to speak to him about possibly enrolling my son." "I understand. Let me fetch him for you. Please wait here," he responded before stepping into the back again. When he returned, he was not alone. Accompanying him was an elderly-looking Japanese man with long white hair and a matching beard, shorter than Inko at barely 5 feet tall if she felt generous. "I understand that you wish me to welcome your son into my dojo," the man said. Inko noticed his voice was measured and polite, and the man's black eyes twinkled though with a hint of mischief. "That would be correct, sensei, but I must first tell you that my son possesses a minor quirk. He can channel sound into light, which he can release in small bursts. Like mini fireworks." Inko waited for the typical response. "I see that he is not with you. I cannot give you a decision till I meet the boy. His quirk is not important," the man said. "Bring him with you tomorrow. After I meet him, I will decide then." "Very well, I will bring him after school tomorrow. Could you tell me what the fees are?" "After I meet the boy and decide, you can discuss the fees with Christopher." He bowed and left the room. "I apologize for sensei," the young man named Christopher said. "Please bring your son tomorrow. If the master decides to teach him, I will happily discuss the fees with you. Do not fret. We are not expensive, I assure you, and the education he will receive should he be accepted is one of a kind, ma'am. May I have your name, please?" Inko blushed, realizing she hadn't introduced herself. 𝗂𝐭𝐴𝐵𝐿, my son's name is Izuku," she said, bowing. "Then I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow and meeting your son as well. Please bring a pair of shorts and a shirt that he can wear should he be accepted. I will do that. I appreciate your kindness, Mr. King, he responded. Thank you, Mr. King. I will see you tomorrow, she said before exiting the room. Izuku. The next day when 𝗏𝗏 told Izuku he had an interview at the dojo, he became very excited and slightly nervous. Though he was sad that he couldn't play with Kyoka, he felt it was worth it. His enthusiasm was dampened somewhat when his mother brought him to the small, off-the-beaten-pathway dojo. But seeing as they had passed other dojos along the way, when he questioned his mother, she told him many of them didn't feel right to her. Izuku just nodded. Why would his mother lie to him? When they entered, Izuku was surprised again when the American, his mother, greeted Mr. King and awaited their arrival. There is no need to call me Mr. King. Please call me Chris or Christopher, he said, smiling pleasantly at 𝗏𝗏. He turned his attention to Izuku next. Hello, you must be Izuku. It is a pleasure to meet you, he said as he bowed. Nice to meet you, Mr. King. I mean Chris, Izuku said, responding with a bow. It did feel odd calling someone older than him by their first name, but after the conversation between the American and his mother, he was unsure how to proceed. Chris is just fine, Izuku, he said smiling. I am just a student here, so don't worry about being formal with me, especially if you end up joining us here, so I want you to relax, and I will take you to get changed. The master does not like to be kept waiting. Chris led Izuku to the changing room and waited for the boy to emerge. When Izuku did so, he smiled at the boy's all-might shirt and led him into the dojo proper. Upon entering, he saw two gigantic young men with black hair sparring each other at a furious pace. As an older man sat watching them, Izuku noticed that they were both American. When the sparring match had concluded, he heard the old man send two boys to fetch the water. From the downtrodden look on their faces, Izuku wondered if that meant something else. When Izuku noticed the master was looking at him, he suddenly became very nervous. Chris placed his hand on Izuku's shoulder, grabbing his attention. Listen, Izuku, just answer from your heart. Do not attempt to deceive, and you will be just fine, I promise. Izuku stepped forward, knowing he was being judged. Nervously, he looked towards the ground. First, little one, always look a person in their eyes. This is very important, the master spoke. Izuku immediately listened and did as he was instructed. A person's eyes can tell you a lot about a person, as can their posture and bodies, so the first thing you must learn is to stand straight and always look them in their eyes. Yes, sir, Izuku responded, his voice shaking from nerves. Why do you want me to teach you? Izuku remembers Chris's words. I don't have a very powerful quirk, and I get picked on a lot at school, and I don't have many friends, but I have one friend. And she is the bestest friend in the world. I don't particularly appreciate her getting picked on too, just for being my friend. I want to be a hero, to keep people safe, and my friend is the first person I want to keep safe. I don't want to beat people up, but I need to be able to defend people, especially if they can't defend themselves. Chris was smiling from behind Izuku and saw the corner of one of his master's lips go up for a second. If I train you, this is not just how to fight or defend someone. It is a way of life. You will have to work hard. I will train you hard, and once you start, I will not allow you to quit. I promise that when we are done, you will be a hero and be able to defend what is most precious to you. Can you do that, little one? Yes, sensei. Very good then, I will train you. Christopher, discuss payment with his mother. Little one, show me how you throw a punch. 𝗏𝗏. Chris emerged from the back with a smile. The master has agreed to train your son if you agree to our terms for payment. 𝗏𝗏 took a deep breath. What are the terms? Chris smiled. You will provide a large bag of rice and turnips every month as well as 3,000 yen. I apologize. I must have misheard you. Rice, turnips, and 3,000 yen? A week? No, a month, Chris responded. She still wasn't sure if she heard him right, but after he handed her the paperwork to sign, which she read 3 times, her payment requirements were apparent. She also noticed that it included weight and quirk training. I promise you, Mrs. Midoriya, your son will have all the support and training he needs to make his dreams come true, Chris told her. 𝗏𝗏 would have to monitor things closely, but for now, she agreed. The terms were month-to-month, contingent on her payment. Izuku and 𝗏𝗏. On the way home, she asked him about his first day. He told her that he was learning how to throw a punch all day and that the sensei was correcting him every step of the way. Izuku asked her if they could afford the extra expense. He didn't know much about money but knew that his mother would do without on his behalf many times. It was one of the reasons he didn't like to ask for anything. But he felt this was important enough to ask for. 𝗏𝗏 smiled. "That is not something for you to fret over, young man. But if it puts you at ease, yes, we afford it. It is affordable, so don't worry your little head, my future hero." 𝗬𝗏, "That's right, Mama, you watch. I am going to be a great hero. Better than All Might?" "No one is that good," Izuku replied with such a severe tone that 𝗏𝗏 couldn't help but laugh. "It is funny I can't call Sensei master like the other boys. Why is that?" "He said that I am but a grasshopper or a mantis along the path of the way, but if I work hard enough, he will become my master." I didn't understand, but Chris said he would explain later. "Well, make sure you let me know what Chris says." "Okay, Mama." Training. Entering the dojo for his first official day, he quickly went to the locker room to get changed. He was somewhat confused about his mother dropping off turnips and rice but decided not to question it too much. He was pretty happy to see that a GI was waiting for him. Once changed, he walked out of the training room, where he was introduced to the other students. To his surprise, they were all American, and only 2 were there. So with him and Chris, that made 4 in total. There was Nick, tall and broad, standing at 6 feet 5 inches, with a warm smile, hearty laugh, black hair and blue eyes. And Darius, as tall as Nick with black hair and honey brown eyes. Both boys were physically imposing, especially to one so small as Izuku. Hell, they would have been imposing to most adults due to their heights. "Okay, Izuku, I am going to lead you in most of your training. Nick, when the time comes, will see to your weight and body training. Darius will lead you in combat training," Kai's told him. "What about Sensei?" "He will step in when he decides. His orders take place over all others. I am going to lead you in your stretching, and then you will learn to fetch the water." After some stretching exercise, Izuku was led to the back of the dojo, where there was a small hill, and at the top stood a well. Chris handed him 2 buckets of water, sitting on the ends of a stick, designed to rest across the shoulders. "You will go up and retrieve 2 buckets of water and return." Chris pointed to a line outside the bucket if the water level falls below this mark. "You will return up the hill, refill, and begin again." "Okay, but..." "No, Izuku, there are no questions. There are only tasks. Right now, your task is this. Track 2. Smokestack Lightnin' Helen Wolf. Watch V equals 9 Re 7 Tuck AJ8. It took him 4 tries, and this was the most intense workout Izuku had ever done. He didn't understand it. He counted how many steps it was from the base of the hill to the top of the well. It was different every time. He wanted to question, but Chris shook his head. "The first thing you will learn is how to breathe and move," Chris said. Before leading him at the beginning of his form training, it started simply as the most crucial part was breathing. Nick gave him some very light weights, having to do some reps to lay the foundation for what they would do later as he got older before he concentrated on increasing Izuku's stamina. Darius was a fun teacher and had this way of correcting Izuku that was gentle but got the point across. Much like yesterday, it was all punches. Izuku was tired when Chris walked over and pointed to the water buckets. It took Izuku 5 tries this time, and he began to curse the little hill that was not so little. Watching the others struggle made him realize it had to be something with Sensei's quirk. He was at the dojo on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and the routine was the same. Every day it was the same. More was added when he mastered more of his form training, and when he could run the chosen distance, more was added. Capable of punching, it was time to learn to kick. But no matter what, he and his brothers must fetch the water. And no matter what, that hill would torment Izuku to no end. Tuesday and Thursday were Kyoka and his days to be kids. They studied, played music, and enjoyed their friendship. But after staring at the dojo, Izuku wondered if she was indeed his friend or just a demon in disguise. Kyoka took delight in poking his arms and teasing him. It escalated to her joining him for one class, but after experiencing the difficulty, she decided it wasn't for her. She did often walk home with him, however. At first, he was a bug, but the more he learned, he was told he had evolved into a reptile. Each step along the path was a to being human, and the integration of mind, body, and spirit was essential to walk the way before him genuinely. Kai's was stern but friendly. Nick would tease and make him laugh, and Darius gave him precise instructions and straightforward methods to improve his strikes. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 once tried to threaten him on the street while walking to the dojo. Izuku was scared till Chris stepped up and chased him off. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 had uttered the phrase, "You and what army?" Suddenly, there were 10 of Chris, US, they said in unison. He evolved into a tiger when meditation was introduced at the dojo. Each member took turns leading their meditation. Chris on Mondays, Nick on Wednesdays, Darius on Fridays, and the master on Saturdays. He was proud to call the master his teacher, and felt like a brother to his 3 fellow students who challenged, comforted, and supported him throughout his years of growth. Nick and Darius are good at helping him with his confidence, standing up for himself, and speaking his mind. Chris told him something: doing what is right is not always what people consider good. Doing what is right is sometimes standing up against everyone else and saying this is wrong. Chris walks Kyoka and Izuku home after class. They discuss heroism and homework, Chris offering any help he can. He takes care of them, sometimes while waiting for their parents to get home. Izuku and Kyoka call him their big brother, but he doesn't correct them. Week after week, month after month, year after year, he trains. And track. It has been 3 years since Izuku, age 9, started his training. He is lean and fit. Although he doesn't do as heavyweight training as everything else, he does lightweight training and lots of cardio. Today is a special day for him as he is told that they will get to go against the master. He has sparred with his brothers, but to say they are taking it lightly is an understatement. They never use their quirks on him. His quirk training is handled by the master, helping him let loose brighter blasts. But his brothers, on the other hand, have much more combat-oriented quirks. Chris has the power of duplication. Nick can speed up his movement and his allies. He calls it acceleration. Darius has control of this black and orange fire. He tells Izuku that the more evil someone has done, the more the fire will hurt them. It is a spiritual fire he calls hellfire. Kyoka is there today, as Chris invited her to watch. Their sensei takes his place in the middle of the room. Now, children, snatch the pebble. They must get the smooth gray stone from the master's hand. Why do I think this is not going to be easy? Izuku said. And why a pebble? It's kind of... Because we have a chance to get the pebble, but not to win in a fight, Nick said. But today is different, adds Darius, adding a burst of positivity. How? Asks Chris. We have Izuku now, and I am sure he wants to show off for his girlfriend. Darius, she is not my girlfriend. She is my bestest friend. Nick laughs. Alright boys, we can tease Izuku later. Here is the plan, Darius, go left, I'll go right. Chris, you and your army take the front. Izuku, you attack from behind. Use your quirk to try and blind him. Warn us first. Don't be afraid to go all out. But from behind is kind of cowardly, isn't it? Izuku said. Shouldn't we fight him head-on? Are you going to walk up to a villain, tap him on the shoulder, and say, "Excuse me, sir, would you like to fight now, or would you rather terrorize citizens than fight?" Chris said. What is the purpose of a fight? To win, Darius and Nick responded. All 3 were looking at Izuku. This is not a spar but a fight, Chris said. Remember, you fight to win and take down your opponent fast. Less collateral damage. They all take their stances. Nick turns and looks at Kyoka. If you wouldn't mind, little lady. Kyoka smiles and raises her hand. Track 3. Ballroom Blitz. Sweet. Watch V equals NPQPDYTTL7U. They were surrounded by yellow energy suddenly. Nick and Darius launched from their position, leaving holes in the floor mats. The army of Chris's did the same. Izuku used the cover of Chris's attack to maneuver behind their sensei. He was moving so fast that he almost tripped and fell. Darius's hands erupted into flames as he and Nick launched their attack. Nick threw a left cross while Darius executed a right kick. The master leaned back and raised his knee to block the kick. He struck Darius with an open palm strike in a blur of motion, sending him flying. Nick immediately followed with a spin kick, which the master blocked, then swept Nick's leg, sending him airborne. All the while, he was holding the stone in an open palm. As Chris and his army descended on the master, it was a flurry. The master remained untouched, sending duplicates, maybe even the original flying. Izuku saw his opening now. releasing a blinding flash and diving for the open palm. He grabbed nothing but air. An elbow struck him in the back, and a sidekick sent him away. Izuku regained his air as quickly as he could. The army of Chris started to attack again, only to be driven away. This time when they hit the ground, they would fade out. Nick grabbed the sensei's right arm as Darius latched onto the left leg. Izuku tried to capture the right arm and get the stone. Nick was thrown back off with a headbutt, and Izuku was met with a strike to his side. A downward strike caught Darius in the temple, knocking him out. Chris came in with a leaping punch, only to be met with a spin kick sending him into darkness. Izuku was gasping for breath. Nick's nose, bloodied, came in as hard as possible to meet darkness with a rising kick. Izuku rose to his knees. His brothers were unconscious. He saw an axe kick coming for him. He raised his hands in an X to block. "I yield," he called out. The kick stopped. Kyoka was in awe of the spectacle she just saw. She rose from her seat and walked over to the sensei. "Can I have the pebble?" He smiled warmly at her and handed it over. She turned and looked at Izuku. "Mine," and she skipped over to her seat. As Izuku's brothers regained consciousness, their master said one thing. "Fetch the water," the four boys groaned. Track end. As Izuku had changed, he walked into the training room to see Kyoka being shown some things by the master. He noticed that the master smiled while teaching her, a fondness that Izuku had not seen before. When he came over, he smiled and bowed. "Master, how is the hill never the same size?" "Because the distance is always different," he said with a smile. "That is why we can never hit you. Our arms are never long enough," Izuku said with a smile as things clicked. "Something like that. Make sure to walk Kyoka all the way home now," he said, walking to the back. Chris emerged, watching Kyoka and Izuku throwing playful attacks at each other, and smiled. "Come on, you two, it's time to go home." "Okay, Chris," they responded as they followed him out the door and into the night. Izuku and Kyoka stood staring at each other. The 10-year-olds were in a bit of a panic. Thoughts of "how did we get into this mess?" raced across their faces. Kyoka stared at Izuku, narrowing her eyes. "You know this is your fault, Izuku," she accused, much to his shock. "How's this my fault? You are the one that told the teacher that we both play instruments," he said in defense. "That was after you talked about music night with my parents last night," she countered. "Look, let us just say that we are both to blame, and now we need to figure a way out," he said, holding his hands out in front of him. "How are we going to perform a song in front of the school?" she said, holding her head. Trying to figure a way out of this predicament they found themselves in. "Okay, listen, we just need to fake our death and leave the country," he said, snapping his fingers. Her eyes widened. This was the perfect solution. "Okay, I'll go pack. Make sure you bring some juice boxes." "On it," he said, running off. They were arguing outside Kyoka's house over who forgot to bring the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Kyoka's parents had been watching The Great Escape for 20 minutes. Izuku got scolded by his brothers for 3 hours for attempting to run from his responsibilities. Kyoka talked to her parents for 10 minutes, who then told her and Izuku to hurry up and get practicing. Kyoka and Izuku practiced and practiced. Soon they could perform the song without messing up, but only do it when it was just the two. They graduated to do it before their parents and others from the dojo. Anyone else, and they froze. Katsuki was teasing them about how they would choke in front of the whole school. Kyoka was having nightmares, and Izuku was terrified. The stage fright was eating them alive, and nothing seemed to be breaking it. Nerves were eating them alive. Nick finally said, "Listen, kids, just ignore everyone else, okay?" They looked at him in plain confusion. "You guys are best friends, right?" They nodded in response. "And if it's just the two of you, then you can do it. Just like in meditation where we block out everything else. Just do that. Ignore everyone else and just play for each other." Just for Kyoka and Izuku. Izuku tried it first, and surprisingly, by solely focusing on Kyoka, he could ignore everyone else. With some coaching from Izuku and Chris soon, Kyoka could do the same. They practiced and practiced. Kyoka would tell him she was calm. She had it under control. She teased him that he was going to freak. She was terrified. The morning came, and she threw up lunch. She swore to the rock gods that her stomach was trying to escape her body and strangle her. Izuku was shaking, and he was nervous. He did not want to make a mistake. He wanted Kyoka to be proud of him. He wanted to play for her and show it was worth all the practice they had put in, that all the lessons her parents and her had given him were not for nothing. I can't do it, Izuku. They are all going to laugh at me when I start singing, Kyoka blurted out. No, they won't, Kyoka. You sing way better than me, Izuku replied. Not when I forget all the words and faint. It is just you and me, Kyoka, no one else. There is no one at all, only me and you, remember. Just like in your room, sing to me. That is what I will do. I am singing for you. Their names were called. It was their turn to take the stage. The only thing Kyoka could hear was her heart thundering in her ears. As she and Izuku walked across the stage carrying their guitars, they took their seats. The teacher adjusted the microphones. The room was spinning. Kyoka knew she was going to faint. She should just run away before that happened. Her attention was drawn to a scrapping sound. Izuku was adjusting his chair to face her. Just look at me, Kyoka. Just sing to me, and it will all be okay, he whispered. She turned her chair so they were facing each other. They sat there for a breath, staring at each other. She could not hear her mother and Inko squeal. Izuku did not hear his brothers laugh. Just you and me, Kyoka, don't sing to them. Sing to me, and I will sing to you. I believe in you, he whispered. Track 4. I've got this friend, the Civil Wars. Watch V=VTLGFXL23I. Izuku gave Kyoka a small smile before the lights dimmed. He struck the first chord and began to sing, never breaking eye contact. Everything else gently faded away. All that mattered to him was singing to Kyoka, proving to her how much her lessons meant to him. Kyoka was looking at him, staring into those emerald green eyes. Everything started to fade away. Nothing else mattered, only Izuku and her. There was no one else. She didn't want anyone else or need them. As Kyoka sang to her bestest friend, she knew that something was changing at this moment. It scared her and delighted her. Something was forever altered in this moment for both of them. When her voice joined in the song, beautiful was his thought. He had seen her like this in her room when they would practice songs for their world tour. This was different. She was beautiful. There was no one else, only her. He wanted this forever. Just her and him. Just Kyoka and Izuku. He didn't understand it, but he knew that no matter what life brought, he could conquer it as long as she was by his side. The song's final chords were strummed, and the applause pulled them almost reluctantly back to the real world. Even Katsuki's cry of "Stupid Deku" was drowned out simply by the yells of Inko and Mika. Mitsuki looked at her son funny when he said wanted to learn the drums. Once off stage, they hugged tightly. I couldn't have done it without you, they both said, laughing. Whatever was different hung in the back of their minds, but neither knew what I was or how to address it, so they let it lie. Things changed after that performance. For some reason, people started paying more attention to them, like the kids in school would still give Deku a hassle, but the girls would still give him shit. Some did not have the same malice. It was almost like they were joking with him, playful. Hell, if someone were on the outside looking in, they would say flirtatious. Even some guys would tell him things like "good song, man." Of course, only when Bakugo was away. Bakugo got even more annoyed when he noticed Deku was getting special attention. Kyoka, it was strange. She was not getting harassed as much. What was even stranger was some of the older girls in the gym asking her if Izuku was her boyfriend. No, he is just my best friend. The strangest thing was when Bakugo told her she had a lovely voice. It would have been a nice moment if he did not immediately try and attack Izuku for getting a better score on the math test. Kyoka and Izuku spent much time together, writing terrible songs and playing music. However, their hand contact had become awkward, and they now argued frequently over trivial matters. She did not like the way he played a note. He did not like that she went with Seizo and Cal to the library to work on a project. She did not like that Kiki and Val were at his house while working on something. Typically, the fight would dissolve into name-calling one or both, running away in tears, saying they were no longer best friends. They would proclaim to their parents that their friendship was over and that it would never be repaired. They would ignore each other for a few days, being mopey and miserable before one would break and run, apologizing to the other. They would cry and hug, promising never to let it happen again, only for it to happen again. Their brother Chris was not helping by pointing out at various times where they went wrong and whose fault it was. Both had wanted him on their side, and he was calling it right down the middle. It was a horrible pattern, but eventually worked out when the kids turned 11. Though they did not have new friends, talking to other people in school was nice. Kyoka and Izuku had realized what they were afraid of was the other finding new friends and leaving the other behind. The feat that they would no longer be close or best friends was at the heart of it all. That was the root of the problem. Of course, they were able to figure it out, with a bit of help from Chris. But that is what big brothers were for. With only one semi-major squabble, another year it was past. The dojo. Izuku was at the gym. They had just finished the day. He was bummed it was spring break, but Kyoka and his mother were in Tokyo with her parents. They had booked some gigs and taken Inko with them, giving the woman a bit of a vacation as she had finally decided to divorce Hitoshi, something he didn't fight her on. Kyoka and Izuku talked daily, but it was not the same. Something was missing, and neither knew what it was. His silent musings on what was bothering him were broken when he heard someone walk through the front door and straight into the dojo. Before he could speak, he only saw blonde hair, blue eyes, and sex appeal. She wore a tight black pencil skirt, a blue blouse with ample cleavage, black boots, and a swish in her hips that Izuku's 12-year-old brain was unprepared for. It took him a moment to realize that he was ogling her. He flushed bright red. It was terrible, but not quite as bad when he found himself staring at Kyoka at the beach. That experience of all sorts left him in a mess for weeks. I mean, why did he stare at her like that? And then have that reaction? Then it was worse when Kyoka pressed up against him in the water. It had added to the confusion in his mind, and he didn't like it. Why was Kyoka confusing him so much? And who is this beautiful blonde girl? She is truly like no one I have ever seen. Why am I confused when Kyoka touches my hand? A giggle snapped him back. I don't know who Kyoka is, but it's flattering that I rank with her. Her Japanese was passable. She had a definite accent. Is Chris here? Shit, I said all that aloud. Sure, let me get him for you. He dashed to the back, where his brothers were just done getting changed. Chris, a beautiful girl in the dojo, is asking for you. About this high blonde, blue eyes, Nick asked. His hand was about the mystery girl's height. Yes, how did you know Nick? Izuku asked. Oh, it's probably just Nettie. And here I thought Chrissy had a date, Darius added. Yeah, right, Chris couldn't get laid with $100 bills hanging out of his pockets. But hurry up, Darius, we don't want to keep the girls waiting. Nick said. We have actual dates. Fuck you guys. Chris retorted. The two older brothers laughed and walked out. Izuku could hear them say, Hi Nettie, bye Nettie. Hi and bye you two, he heard her call out. Chris finished dressing and put an arm around Izuku's shoulder. Get changed. I will introduce you. That's not necessary, Chris. I wouldn't want to intrude. Nonsense. I want you to meet them. Besides, I am supposed to be looking after you while Inko is away. Chris stood and waited for Izuku to get changed. When they came out, there was one of the best-looking guys that Izuku had ever seen. It was strange for the thought to cross his mind, but it did nonetheless. Standing next to Nettie was a young man about 6 feet 2 inches. Black suit, purple shirt, and a few buttons undone. Hair long pulled back in a ponytail, violet blue eyes, and perfect skin. It was just something that oozed off him. Izuku was drawn back to reality when he saw the two strangers run over and embrace Chris, Nettie, Alex. Guys, this is my little brother Izuku Midoriya. He bowed. A pleasure to meet you. He heard her giggle, then he was embraced. His head was placed between two warm, relatively soft, generous pillows. Has crashed. Reboot is in progress. I think you broke him, Nettie, Alex said. Chris just laughed. As Izuku rebooted, his face was nuclear. What? Why? Nettie laughed. It was rich and warm, with no hint of mocking. Chris has told us a lot about you. Any little brother of his is ours as well. Come on, let's go get dinner. The four amigos. It started that night. Then, it was just breathless. Izuku was grabbed by Nettie's hand and dragged along. His protests or pleas were ignored at the whims of the incredibly powerful blonde. For the whole week, it was like that. Training would end. Then Nettie and Alex would appear and drag him and Chris off into the night. They dragged him out dancing. He had no idea how they even got in. He learned how to dance because 𝗧𝗏 would not take no for an answer. It was so much fun. 𝗧𝗏 and Alex had an infectious energy every night. Izuku thought the best part was how different Chris was around his friends. It was just this mad rush of fun and experiences. The only thing that made Izuku a little sad was that Kyoka was there having fun with them. Every night he would text Kyoka excitedly, telling her about everything and sending her photos. She sent back photos of the performances she was at and musicians she was meeting. She kept sending him all these photos of her hanging around her cousin. He felt jealous. He didn't know why, but something about it just gnawed at him. Alex and 𝗧𝗏 were Chris's childhood friends, and they were dating. They were here to visit Chris from America, where they attended a hero school called Silverton University after America's first premier superhero 𝐒𝐩𝐢𝐧𝐼. 𝗧𝗏's quirk, or gift as she called it, was energy manipulation. Alex could fire a strange blast that unleashed a powerful shockwave. He could then absorb the energy released, refueling himself. Once 𝗧𝗏 learned of Izuku's quirk, she trained him and helped him make 2 breakthroughs. One, he could unleash light from the channeled sound into a laser shot, courtesy of Alex's teaching, as his ability had him absorb and release energy. He could solidify it into a shield since they could shape light release into smaller or bigger flashes. He had called Kyoka, and as he was gushing about how awesome 𝗧𝗏 was and how she had helped, Kyoka snapped and told him to go ahead and make her his best friend and then hung up. She did not answer his calls for the rest of the trip. He would see her pictures on the gram. She was hanging around with her cousin, at the beach and all over the place. He tried calling her to find out why she was so mad until he stopped for a bit. Izuku was mad, frustrated, and confused. It had been 4 days, and aside from seeing pictures posted, there was no communication between them. They had never gone that long without talking, and Izuku was increasingly frustrated. On this day, they were at Alex and 𝗧𝗏's hotel pool. 𝗧𝗏 in a bikini was another thing altogether. But he kept getting pulled back to Kyoka. He tried calling her, but she ignored him again. Chris sat at the pool edge beside him, giving him a little shoulder bump. "Alright, Izuku, what is wrong?" He thought about lying but shrugged and spilled it all out to his older brother, the confusion and anger, the unreasonable reactions on his part and hers. Chris sat there and thought for a moment. "Okay, listen, I will tell you something, and I want you to listen. Don't ask questions till I am done." He took a deep breath. "I am bisexual. I am attracted to both men and women. I fell in love with my best friend." He pointed to 𝗧𝗏. "I didn't say anything, then we met Alex, and he was a little damaged. And I fell in love again. Alex does not swing that way, and he was in no place for me to say anything. He did not need that from me." Chris paused, letting Izuku absorb what he had said for a brief moment. He needed a friend. Since I had kept my mouth shut, I watched my 2 best friends, whom I was in love with, fall in love with each other. Look, Izuku, you and Kyoka are best friends. I get that, but that uncomfortable feeling in the pit of your stomach that you are feeling is jealousy. Trust me on this. Kyoka is probably feeling the same thing. I am sure you are sending her pictures of 𝗧𝗏, and gushing about her is also causing her those same uncomfortable feelings. Look at those 2 in the water. Izuku looked over. Alex was holding 𝗧𝗏 out of the water, holding her close as she looked down at him, her hands resting on Alex's face as she leaned down and kissed him deeply. Close your eyes and imagine that you are Alex and Kyoka is 𝗧𝗏. He did just that. With the warmth that flooded him, his head spun. His mind rushed. Her against him at the beach, her laugh, her smile. She would close her eyes when she sang a song she liked. Her warmth against him on her bed. The feeling of whenever she took his hand. The way she would hold him when he cried or when she jumped on his back for a piggyback ride. Performance of how everything had faded away. There was nothing at that moment but them. He wanted that forever. How empty he felt when they were apart. His joy when he saw her after training, or in the morning when she would open the door to go to school. She was the last thought before he went to sleep, and his first when he woke up. How when anything good happened, he needed to tell her first. Now, whatever you just imagined. Imagine her doing any of that with someone else. He hoped he would never experience having his heart ripped out of his chest. But if it ever happened, he knew what it would feel like. "Well?" Chris asked. "I am in love with her," Izuku whispered. "So, what are you going to do about it?" Chris said, "You can't keep running. What should I do? Izuku said, I have never confessed to anyone before. I have never felt like this. Go big, Alex said, making Izuku jump. Huh, Izuku replied in confusion. Go big. Don't leave any room for doubt or confusion. Make sure she knows exactly how you feel. What if she doesn't feel the same? Izuku said, his voice full of concern and worry. Then it will hurt, but if you are friends, you can work past it. It might take some time, and your friend might run halfway across the world, but just chase them down. Trust me, it's worth it, Alex said, looking at Chris. What are you boys up to? 𝗧𝗏 came swimming over. Izuku is going to make his first love confession, and I was telling him to go big, Alex replied. Go big or go home. 𝗧𝗏 said, pumping her fist into the air. Don't worry, Izuku, we got your back now. What are we going to do? They immediately started planning. Thankfully, 𝗧𝗏 was there as their plans needed much help. He sent me a single text to her saying, just tell me when you get home, please. I miss you. Kyoka knew she had messed up. She had gotten so angry and stubbornly dug her feet in instead of fixing the problem, especially when 𝐒𝐭 explained who was in the pictures and their relationship with Chris. She always jumped to conclusions, and now she had messed up and made it worse. She did not know how to fix this and knew her no response made it worse. She saw the final text before Izuku just stopped texting her. No more good night or good mornings. She was sullen the rest of her trip. Her parents told her to do as he asked. Izuku had already extended the olive branch and given her space. She nodded and told herself she would do that and text when they got home. She didn't even notice when they got off the plane that 𝗏𝗏 had come to the house with them. She set her stuff down in her room, closed her eyes, and texted, Punk rock girl, I'm home. I missed you too and I'm sorry. She prayed silently that she hadn't completely broken everything when she jumped as her phone vibrated almost immediately. Captain Firework, come to the backyard. She was confused and walked downstairs towards the back. She did not even notice her parents and 𝗏𝗏 lurking behind her. As soon as she entered, all these strands of lights came on, and standing in the middle of them was Izuku. She did not notice Chris gently taking her arm and guiding her to a chair before Izuku. Don't say anything, Kyoka. Just listen, please. If you speak, I won't be able to do this. She just nodded. The parents started recording. Track 5. Just the way you are, Bruno Mars. Watch. V equals 𝐒𝐻𝐼𝐾𝐻𝐿𝐽XK. Oh, her eyes, her eyes. Make the stars look like they are not shining. Her hair falls perfectly without her trying. It happened again. Everything faded away just like that performance. It was just her and him. His eyes never left hers. She knew it was happening. She couldn't believe it. She held her hands to her mouth as her best friend sang his heart out. He bared himself to her. The change from that day on the stage suddenly became clear. She's so beautiful, and I tell her every day. Yeah, I know. When I compliment her, she won't believe me. And it's so. Sad to think that she doesn't see what I see. But every time she asks me, do I look okay? I say, when I see your face, there's not a thing that I would change. 'Cause you are amazing. Just the way you are. And when you smile, the whole world stops and stares for a while. 'Cause girl, you're amazing. Just the way you are. Yeah. Her lips. I could kiss them all day if she'd let me. Her laugh. She hates it, but I think it's so sexy. She's so beautiful, and I tell her every day, oh, you know, I'd never ask you to change. If perfect's what you're searching for, then stay the same. So don't even bother asking if you look okay. I'll say, when I see your face, there's not a thing that I would change. 'Cause you're amazing. Just the way you are. And when you smile, the whole world stops and stares for a while. 'Cause girl, you're amazing. Just the way you are. The way you are. Girl, you're amazing. Just the way you are. When I see your face, there's not a thing that I would change. 'Cause you're amazing. Just the way you are. And when you smile, the whole world stops and stares for a while. 'Cause girl, you're amazing. Just the way you are. Yeah. As the last chord fluttered into the night, Izuku set his guitar aside and walked up to her, extending his hand. She took it wordlessly, and he pulled her to her feet. Kyoka, you are my best friend, and I am in love with you. I don't know how long I have been in love with you, but I love you. Will you please be my girlfriend? Kyoka's mind swirled. Before she could even think or overthink it, she cried, crashing into him, and hugged him tight. Yes, yes, I love you too. I love you too. With that, they looked into each other's eyes and kissed. It was soft as they were both new to this, but it grew stronger. They were brought back from their little personal universe by the cheering of their parents and clapping. They both were blushing, but they did not release their hug. She held him tight, her head on his shoulder, as a smile broke across their faces. Kyoka. She did not want to separate from Izuku, but she knew she could not just stand there and hug him for eternity. Slowly the whole experience crept into her mind. She had just shared her first kiss in front of her parents, his mother and others. She had just confessed to and accepted the confession in front of the entire audience. She could feel the blood rushing to her face. She buried her head in his chest, trying to hide. It was a strange voice that was giggling that brought her attention back as she tried to get control of herself. Standing there was the blonde from the photos. The one that had caused them to fight, but, in the end, she had caused this magical moment, possibly responsible for this embarrassing predicament. Was it possible to not like someone but like them simultaneously? Hi, Jiro, it is nice to meet you. My name is Tsunedra Dayspring. She extended her hand. Kyoka separated herself from Izuku. Immediately, she missed his warmth. She took the girl's hand. Hi, please call me Kyoka. Call me Nettie. He looks happy. Kyoka looked back to Izuku and noticed little fireworks erupting around him. Kyoka giggled. He does that sometimes. It's one of the things I love. It is cute. Let me introduce you to my boyfriend. Alex, this is Kyoka Alex. Pictures had not done her boyfriend justice. Kyoka was starstruck momentarily before she shook his hand. He just smiled and offered his congratulations. He stepped past her and brought Izuku back to reality before saying, Congratulations, lover boy, but we promise to take this all down. Oh right, Izuku said, following after Alex, the goofy smile still on his face. Nettie leaned in and said, If you wouldn't mind giving me your contact info, I can send you the video. I am sure that you will want it. Kyoka started twirling one of her jacks. Yes, please. As she extended her phone, she looked over and saw Chris. She excused herself and ran over to him. Did you have something to do with this? And how did you know? She asked her brother. Kind of. I could tell you two liked each other. And after you two started fighting, I could tell it was jealousy. So, I just gave him a nudge, and he did the rest. Chris said, I didn't want the two of you to hurt each other unintentionally and have that lead to something that couldn't be fixed. I may only be an adopted big brother, but I want the both of you to be happy. Kyoka's eyes watered some. Adopted big brother or not, you are everything I could wish for in a big brother. She stepped in and hugged him tight. Thank you, Chris, but I have to ask, what did you tell him? He returned her hug. Alex and Nettie were affectionate in the pool. Izuku was sitting there on the edge of the pool looking down. We talked some, and I just told Izuku to imagine doing that with you. Then imagine you doing that with someone else. And he realized how he felt. That led to all this. All this, she said, stepping back, was amazing, a dream. Everything I could have ever hoped for. Thank you again, Chris. My pleasure, he responded. Now let me help those bozos get this cleaned up. Kyoka walked over to her parents, her face heating up again. Did you guys know? Of course, honey. They called and asked permission to set all this up. Inko and I were thrilled, her mother responded. We could see things were trending in this direction, but we were worried that both of you may miss what was right before you. Kyoka looked down and blushed more. Not that I am thrilled about my daughter kissing some boy, her father started to say as both the women in his life just looked at him, taking a mirrored pose of one hip out with a hand resting on it. He sighed and smiled. But I am glad it is Izuku. He is a good kid, and I know you two care about each other. Inko hugged Kyoka tightly. I wish nothing but a bright future for you two. Thanks, Mama Inko, Kyoka said as the waterworks broke from the Midoriya matriarch. Kyotokas skillfully maneuvered them near a flower bed. He looked at his wife as he walked back. What? The flowers needed some water. Once the cleanup was completed, it was time for everyone to head home. Kyoka and Izuku shared a kiss as he left. This time minus the audience. It only took him a moment this time to get the fireworks under control. When he got home, he called her, and they talked until they fell asleep on the phone. He was there right on time the following day. They blushed and managed their good mornings before he extended his hand. She interlaced her fingers with his and then walked off down the road. They walked into the school that way, holding hands, leaving no doubt that they were not together. Some of their classmates stopped and stared, but none were surprised. Though some hearts did break, that is neither here nor there. The young couple did not notice the looks they garnered but were wrapped in the sensation of being boyfriend and girlfriend. It was a case of new love, constantly holding hands or being close to each other. They were like that all day, in the hall going to classes, walking to lunch. Their heads tilted towards each other, giggling at each other. 𝗬𝗍𝗂𝐻 rose that day. He did not want to leave her to go to the train so he could go to the dojo. She didn't want him to go either, but they knew Yoshi would not excuse him from training because he wanted to spend time with his new girlfriend. She told him to go and kissed him before blushing furiously. His brothers teased him as he fetched the water with a smile. It was young love, oblivious to what was around them, bad love songs and all. All week it was this way. They answered questions from others who asked if they were together. The young couple didn't notice an ash-blonde-haired boy grinding his teeth. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗵𝗃𝗲. He was pissed. What the fuck is going on? Deku and earlobes? What the fuck were they doing together? How dare that happen? Deku was a piece of shit and was meant to be alone. Yet earlobes was always around him since that day. Why didn't she listen when he told her to stay away? She was not supposed to be with him. She was supposed to be with him. He stalked into the gymnasium. That stupid Deku was making things difficult. He was focused on the dodgeball game being played when he was called out. That piece of shit Deku had the nerve to catch his throw, the audacity to catch 𝗵𝗃𝗲's throw, putting him out. He was leaning against the wall and saw earlobes doing the same. He walked over to her. "Hey, Lobes," he said, the anger and rage bubbling under the surface like a mighty volcano. When she saw him walking over, she hoped he would talk to someone else. It was always a hit-and-miss scenario with 𝗵𝗃𝗲. Most of the time, it was a miss as he still was an asshole to Izuku all the time and sometimes her. He would usually give her attitude and tell her she should stay away from Izuku. The same broken record since kindergarten. He had been acting a bit weirder since the performance a few years ago, but she didn't pay it any mind. She rolled her eyes. "What the hell do you want? What the fuck are you hanging off of Deku like that?" he demanded. One sure way to piss Kyoko off was to come at her and demand answers. It immediately put her hackles up as she spit back. "That's none of your damn business. Look, you dumbass, just answer me." He fired back. Kyoka's face changed from annoyance to anger, but before she could respond, it was then that one of the extras fell and busted their nose, and the teacher stopped the game to walk them to the nurse. Kyoka took a deep breath before "Not that is any of your business, but it's because Izuku is my boyfriend. Now piss off." She walked away from him, proud she had managed to control her anger. He watched her almost skip over to Deku, who was rubbing the back of his head like a fucking moron. Then he saw her look around quickly and plant a kiss on that motherfucker. The anger that was bubbling began to spill over. No, that was not supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to be doing that. He knew she was dumb, but this was it. He was going to show her whom she was supposed to be with and crush this fucking pebble once and for all. "Yo-skin, lock the door," he growled to one of his cronies as he stalked toward the young couple. The rest of the kids noticed and started to form a circle. They could tell something was about to go down. He walked up and roughly yanked Kyoka away from Izuku. "Stay the fuck away from him, earlobes. You aren't supposed to be with this stupid piece of shit," he bellowed. The duo was momentarily shocked at his actions. "What the hell, 𝗵𝗃𝗲? Who the 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 do you think you are that you get to tell me who I can be with? Why the fuck do I need your permission to jam my tongue down someone's throat?" she yelled. "Because I fucking said so. This shit ain't right. Just fucking listen to your better for once in your life," he yelled. Kyoka saw red. Is this motherfucker telling me I need his permission to listen to my better? "Fuck you, 𝗵𝗃𝗲." She tore herself free and grabbed Izuku and jammed her tongue down his throat to the whoops of the crowd. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 lost it. He ripped her away again, and in his anger, his explosion accidentally triggered near her head. She screamed and fell back. "Kai. Fuck earlobes. Why don't you just listen?" He got shoved from behind and sent sprawling to the floor as Izuku rushed past him to Kyoka, the shock of the situation now gone. "Are you okay?" he said, crouched over Kyoka almost in a mirror of all those years ago. She gave him a small smile, trying her best not to show how much pain she was in, but the tears forming in her eyes gave her away. You know what? Fuck this. If your dumb ass doesn't listen, then I will put Deku in his place and make you listen. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 roared. As the words pierced Izuku's ears, he couldn't help but think of how this was like when he first met her, and all he could do was stand there and take the beating in the vain hope of protecting her. He wasn't the same boy he was all those years ago. Years of training at the dojo and years of having Kyoka with him every step of the way saw to that. Now 𝗵𝗃𝗲 had attacked not only his best friend but his girlfriend. Fuck that shit. Track 6. I hope you die, Bloodhound Gang. Watch 𝗵𝗃𝗲 and _channel equals PLP. Die. He leaped at them, letting a thunderous explosion fly at the couple. It rocked the gym and the students considerably. He killed them. The students thought. A glowing shield surrounded the couple as the smoke cleared. Izuku could take a lot, but this was it. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 had hurt Kyoka, and now if it weren't for his shield, God only knows what could have happened. Izuku clenched his fists. Then he heard it. Kick his ass, baby. The shield dropped. Izuku exploded out with a rising knee to 𝗵𝗃𝗲's chin, snapping his head back and sending him flying. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 tumbled. Using his explosions, he rocketed himself forward with a flying right hook. Izuku slipped to the side, delivering a kick to the gut followed by an elbow to the back of the head. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 skipped across the hard ground. Izuku jumped after him, coming down with a knee. The basketball court floor was caved in from where Izuku landed with his knee. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 rolled aside and landed a hard kick from his side position to Izuku's head. The class was shouting and encouraging the fight, but it wasn't the routine cheering for 𝗵𝗃𝗲, so he wouldn't turn on them. None of the students had ever seen someone fight back, let alone draw blood against the school bully. Seeing Izuku fight back and the look of determination ignited cheers from the crowd as they hoped to see 𝗵𝗃𝗲 finally taken down. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 kicked up and launched himself backward into the air. Izuku ran after using his light to create a ramp. He speared 𝗵𝗃𝗲 out of the air and into the wall. The teacher was pounding on the door, attempting to get in. The massive explosion that started the brawl had alerted the whole school. Pinned against the wall, 𝗵𝗃𝗲 landed a solid body blow. Izuku countered with a head but breaking 𝗵𝗃𝗲's nose. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 spun to his side, throwing a wild back elbow. Izuku ducked, wrapping his arms around 𝗵𝗃𝗲's waist, delivering a German suplex. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 rolled through and fired a blast, blinding Izuku for a moment. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 rushed in, delivering a 1-2 combination. He went for the right hook. Izuku saw it and ducked under and captured 𝗵𝗃𝗲's arm, rolling him with a quick motion that separated 𝗵𝗃𝗲's right shoulder. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 swung his left arm forward to fire another blast. A quick shield deflected it as Izuku slipped by and, grabbing 𝗵𝗃𝗲 by the legs, took him down and assumed the mount and just started dropping elbows. After the third, 𝗵𝗃𝗲 went limp as the doors burst open and faculty rushed in. Izuku stood up with blood dripping from his lip. He was breathing heavily as he backed away, his arms up in the air. And track. 𝗵𝗄 and Mitsuki arrived at the school at about the same time. To 𝗵𝗄's surprise, Mitsuki was directed to the nurse's office while 𝗵𝗄 was brought directly to the principal. 𝗵𝗄 saw her son sitting there with a bruise on his cheek, holding a towel to his mouth. "Hey, Mom," he said, looking up at her. His eyes were clear, as was his voice. "Don't you hey Mom me. What the heck happened?" 𝗵𝗄 said, rushing over to inspect him. She was concerned and not angry. She was more frightened when she received the call, only telling her an altercation had occurred and that she needed to rush to the school. "Your son and Mr. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 decided to use quirks in class. Against each other. Now the police are on their way." Izuku instigated the whole affair, the principal said, emerging from his office. The condescending tone in his voice put 𝗵𝗄 off immediately. The door burst open. "That's bullshit. It was all 𝗵𝗃𝗲's fault. Ask the other students. Or check the cameras." Kyoka shouted as she rushed to Yusuke's side. Her quirk had allowed her to hear everything. "Ms. Jiro, return to class," the principal ordered. "Like hell I will. What about this, huh?" She held up her blackened jack. "Crossfire," he said dismissively. "And what about them?" She pointed out the door to most of the class that had come to ensure that 𝗵𝗃𝗲 didn't get away with it this time. His opening attack had shaken them to the core. None of them could produce shields. They all imagined what would have happened to them if their roles were reversed. The principal stormed out into the waiting area to confront the students. 𝗏𝗏 turned to Izuku. "What happened?" she asked while he was distracted. Izuku recounted what had happened leading up to the fight, while Kyoka added what 𝗏𝗃𝗀 had said to her and the explosion that damaged her jack. The ruckus outside was getting louder as the students argued against the principal, demanding that something be done. It wasn't until the police arrived that the order could be reinstated. Nurse's office. 𝗏𝗏𝗀 shot up and instantly regretted it. His face was sore, his body was aching, his shoulder was in a sling. He saw his mother and groaned. "That fucking piece of shit, how did I lose?" he managed to say as he held his hand to his head. Mitsuki resisted the urge to slap her kid, but what caught her attention was that not only was it her son in the nurse's office, but he also looked like he had been beaten soundly. The nurse had given her a rundown of her son's injuries. "What the fuck is wrong with you, Katsuki? Why did you attack Izuku and Kyoka?" she said, angry with a rich undertone. "I know the three of you don't hang out anymore, but what reason would you have for attacking them like that?" "Because stupid earlobes is with Deku, and she isn't supposed to be," he said quietly, defeated. "It wasn't supposed to be this way. I am the future #1 hero, and he is just a goddamn Deku." Mitsuki was confused for a second, then it clicked. "First, don't you ever call him Deku again. He has a name and has been working his ass off. After what he did to you, he deserves to be called Izuku or Midoriya, at least. Second, why would Kyoka want to date you if this is how you act and call her earlobes? Just because your quirk is strong. But if you treat people around you like shit, no one wants to be with someone like that. I dismissed your behavior, thinking you were just like me, and I was right." Katsuki looked at his mom. "What happens now?" "I don't know, brat, I don't know." Front office. The students returned to their class once their statements were being collected. Amazingly, the cameras who had lost the footage of the incident in the gym miraculously recovered it as soon as the police arrived. They had Izuku walk through the fight. It was established that Izuku used his quirk in self-defense. Eyewitness statements corroborated it. 𝗏𝗏𝗀 took Izuku and Kyoka back to her house. She called Mika to tell her what had happened and that Kyoka was with her. 𝗏𝗏𝗀 had a lot to think about and a challenging conversation with Mitsuki. Both mothers had known that their sons didn't get along anymore, but not to this extent. Not for a knockdown drag-out brawl in the middle of dodgeball. Midoriya house. 𝗏𝗏𝗀 went to the store to pick up some ice and food for dinner. Izuku lay on his bed. Kyoka looked down at him. "Thank you for defending me." She planted a tender kiss on his lips. Izuku smiled. The pain of the day was worth it all for that tender kiss. Izuku woke up with a very warm sensation next to him. He looked over and nuzzled. Next to him was Kyoka. She had a slight smile on her face. He saw that his door was open. He guessed at the very least that his mom knew, which meant Kyoka's mom knew. So it was okay, and death was not around the corner. Even if it isn't, this is nice, he thought. His alarm woke Kyoka, who mumbled 5 more minutes before it seemed to dawn on her where she was. She sat up quickly, looked down at Izuku and blushed. 𝗏𝗏𝗀's laughter saved them from the moment, ultimately going haywire. "It's okay, Kyoka. Your mom knows. She brought over a fresh uniform for you. Why don't you take a quick shower while I make breakfast?" 𝗏𝗏𝗀 said, her laughter continuing as she walked away. "Morning, beautiful," Izuku said. His smile was bright and warm. "Morning," she managed, despite the blush and desire to flee. After an excellent breakfast, they stepped out into the morning air. Izuku extended his hand. Track 7. Pharrell Williams, Happy. Watch V equals ZBZSay6N_BXs and _channel equals Pharrell Williams VVO. Bakugo did not return to school that day or any day after that. His parents had withdrawn him, and no one knew where he had transferred to. Izuku hadn't entirely realized the pressure that was relieved with him being gone. The entire atmosphere of the school was different. After the fight in the gym, everything changed. Some of his flunkies tried to keep up as if Bakugo were still there or coming back, but they were soon ignored. As they had no power, the fight had dispelled the myth of Bakugo. The change was interesting, to say the least, for the young couple. Guys would walk past Izuku, give him fist bumps, and say things like, "Good morning," or "Hey man, what's up?" He wasn't this social pariah anymore. He was being given respect, It was a lot for him to take in, but it also carried a bit of resentment of what they had to go through to get to this point. He understood how the school had protected Bakugo, and how everything was always someone else's fault. Someone had to stand up. Fortunately, Izuku had been able to beat him in a fight, and Kyoka had rallied everyone to stand up and not let it be swept under the rug. Kyoka was in the same boat but from the girls. Kyoka noticed she didn't like the girls, especially those there for the fight, who seemed to enjoy talking to Izuku now. While the boys talked to her, they tried hard to keep it friendly, as if Izuku would become a new Bakugo. It took a few weeks for them to realize that wasn't who Izuku was. The girls, on the other hand, started to see how good of a catch Izuku was. While they wouldn't outright flirt with him in front of her, she noticed all the attention they gave him. Thankfully, she was able to keep the green jealousy monster under control. Overall, the air was better, and the lack of stress was divine. Izuku and Kyoka enjoyed the change of pace. They had already been discussing going to a different high school than Bakugo. They were looking at 𝗧𝗪𝗏 High, which offered an outstanding academic and robust musical curriculum. It would give them the best chance of getting into the UA and allow them to continue music, something they both loved. It was a much better time than they had ever experienced, and it set a new expectation of what their school life should be and would be. The young couple were very much in love with each other and their new school life. To put it simply, they were happy.